I feel that we nailed a lot of areas to what Among the Sleep turned out as. So, with like I mentioned before, the big and the fantastical, I think we nailed. I love the feeling of the swamp areas in level 3. The forested house, I yeah, really enjoyed that level. And that's everything from atmosphere to the art. I think we've been really lucky, I guess, with just the skill level of the people and how much they did and how hard they worked for Among the Sleep.
I think the whole game has a curve, a tension curve, and like level 3 has that in itself. It starts off quiet, it gets eerie, and then it gets full-blown scary as you get chased by a monster. And then it's scary up until the end, where it's calm again. You meet the mother, and yeah, it's like you have the whole tension curve of the game in one level. So if I wanted to show people one level, that would have to be it.
In the initial design of this level, the forested house, there was an active gameplay mechanic that allowed the player to switch between the house and the forest. It's a mechanic that might have been a good fit if the whole game was based around it, but just for this level we felt it was a bit too much. Plus it also required us to make 2 full versions of this level, and so it's a bad idea from a production perspective in that sense.
Once you come into the big room, you notice there's a lot of lighting focused on the 3 places you can go. They're all blocked, but you see the clear kind of motive of a painting on each one. The one in front of you, and Teddy even states this, has some floating things which are similar to the ones you've seen inside the imagination fields. Sort of how we kind of told people, like, this is where you go.
Where does this one go? Over here?
We were actually stuck on this puzzle mechanic for the longest time, and it was one of the longest and most drawn out discussions we had of probably of the entire game, as far as I can remember. Where we first started out with statues instead of a puzzle piece, and there were things you were supposed to do with the statues. But then we had a internal argument whether this was suited for Among the Sleep because of the child theme. Is this childish enough, or would the child not understand any of this? And so we ended up doing basically the same, but in a much more child-themed wrapping. So we made it a combination of a painting and a jigsaw puzzle instead. So you're basically finding jigsaw pieces, and I think it worked quite well in the end.
Here we used to have also, like, we were struggling a lot, doing a lot of rotation stuff earlier. Like, you had to rotate the things you had in your hand to make use of them, and the puzzles used to be that you had to rotate the puzzle right, but it was kind of not intuitive, and so we dropped that. Now it's easy to place.
I didn't know much about shaders before I started working on Among the Sleep. I did like an assignment on it back in school, but just saying to yourself that, yeah, okay, we we need somebody that learns more about shaders. So let's do this and just dive into it and start discovering this whole world of possibilities. And then you have teammates that join you and are as eager as you at learning new stuff, and suddenly you have, like, for example, in level 3, when you place a puzzle piece in the center, like, wood stump there, and like the trees, the roots and stuff blocking the passages to the left just starts dissolving, and you just know the kind of effect you want to achieve before you start working on it. You know how to solve it, and you just solve it, and it works. And it looks amazing. That's amazing.
This is actually a lot of small animations here, which is interesting, and they will have a little subtle sound each time is to get people to understand that the painting is the object that you should go to, because earlier we had a lot of people kind of go around and look at everything else but the painting. Even when the painting was gone, they didn't really think about checking it.
The paintings are made as a part of the narrative storytelling, and they depict a woman standing on a bridge and ending up falling into the water, and all of these paintings are made so that they are related to the story, not directly. It's not the child's mother that is depicted, but if you look at each frame of the painting, then it tells parts of the story of the game.
So here we are in what we call the left wing, which is sort of the first meeting with the proper forest. This is kind of where things turn a bit weird for this level. So you were just in a house in a hall, and you still have a lot of house items, but now you are in a much more foresty area.
I guess this is the first chapter with an actual physical presence of a monster. So it's introduced very gradually during the whole start of the chapter. So in this left wing, she's not walking freely around, but you have a few events to introduce her theme of water and trees.
And also in level 3, there were a lot of quests that we planned on doing, but just we didn't find a way to do them correctly. In the left wing, you're going over a crate in the water, and there was supposed to be a little puzzle where you have to find something to push it into the water so you can cross the river, but it just didn't look right when we did it, so we had to scrap that. But I like the idea, so I'm disappointed that it's not there.
Right at this point, when you crawl to the log here, this is the first time you hear the monster. It's a little bit of a like a water splash, and that's your first sort of hint that there's something around, something active. And once you come back here, there's actually not too many people who recognize this place, but you go back to sort of midways of the wing, and here we add some more sort of tension elements, like there's a bit more sound. There's a boat coming in slowly, which is just empty, and it will sink once it gets here. That's not a big thing, but there's a sound that rises in intensity kind of all the way up until you get back to the main hub area now. here we had a little thing what we want to implement that we kind of felt that the forest was sort of wet. There was a lot of feeling with sort of the monster who had drowned and was drinking, so having a kind of humid and wet sensation in the level was something we decided. So this is like a little encounter showing this kind of extinguishing of a fire through water. Yeah. So to also kind of make it a bit less light and a bit less cozy. And if you look closely while going around here, you can actually see the Haida, the monster's face, sticking up somewhere when you go down to the water there. She pokes her head up and looks at you. She's very nature creature, so we kind of try to show people that you would find her near water and forests, and like here it would feel a bit safer. It's not here's like the first puzzle piece, and it's kind of narrow, but it's toys here, and it has the feeling of a kid being here before, which is a remnant of like the sub-story of this level before.
So this piece needs to go in a corner.
So here's this airplane toy, and if you pick it up and move around, you'll actually see the propeller of the plane rotate while moving, as if it was actually flying. I think I spent about a day implementing that, which in retrospect was not the best use of time, I think, but it's a fun feature.
It is. Maybe even I should put some sounds to that. When this propeller moves, I could put a moving sound and or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. We should do that.
Yeah, I should also get a computer. And once you come back here, there's actually not too many people who recognize this place, but you go back to sort of midways of the wing, and here we add some more sort of tension elements, like there's a bit more sound, there's a boat coming in slowly, which is just empty, and it will sink once it gets here. That's not a big thing, but there's a sound that rises in intensity, kind of all the way up until you get back to the main hub area now.
This place feels... Let's not dwell here for too long.
Here we also have one of the more obvious hintings towards the theme of alcoholism, where the woman, if you notice the painting, drinks from the well and turns into some strange creature.
I really enjoy what we call the right wing. Here it starts out with, it's such a good transition between the house and the forest there. I think it starts out with the house and just the hallways. It's the building is damaged. You hear the creaking wood and the water is dripping in, and then you have this. And you see the monster outside, and you have to go outside, and suddenly you're in just the swamp area, and it's such a completely different setting. Just being in the house and being in the forest near the water, but it has such a fantastic and smooth transition to it. I really liked that particular part. For these areas, we wanted to make the players feel that they were playing as a child character, because that's one of the struggles we had with this level. That when you are out in the forest areas, it's much harder to get the feeling that you're actually playing a child compared to when being inside of a house. So in this right wing, since you have just been in the left wing, which is mainly forest and swampy areas, we made sure that you had to crawl underneath the bed and then crawl through the ventilation or whatever it is, and then immediately you have to use a stool or drag a stool in order to reach the doorknob to open the door. So just these small things to reinforce and remind the player that you are very small and tiny, and that they are playing a child.
First visual effect and the first time you actually see an actual AI monster. It's cool. You see her through the window and she walks away further in. The road leads there to the well, and when you see the well next time, you know that she's out there somewhere.
One thing I can think of is in level 3, the woman that is the monster was not originally the mother or the parent, or it was just another story about a mother who drowned and the child left behind. But with the new story, it fit with the monster being the mother, and we went with that, and it worked very well.
Right here is actually a little bit of cool sound design. Is that once you're above the bed, there is the sound of dripping water on planks, but when you go beneath, you hear the sounds of water dripping on planks from the other side. So you just hear like the dull thuds of it instead of kind of the watery splashes.
Always enjoy the view of the well from this point, with the fireflies above and the atmosphere of the forest waiting. And you know there's a monster waiting for you as well. I love the feeling of that.
So you modeled that, I guess, and you created the well and you made the fireflies.
Yes. I spent way too long creating the well, and I think it's worth it. It's good.
Is this where you come out from the tunnel, or is this
From the tunnel, especially the view from the tunnel.
One example of this is the well that can be found in level 3.
Done? Let's
We
see
had a
the
pretty big
secrets.
discussion about this internally with almost everyone on the team regarding, is it realistic or not that the child is able to raise the bucket in the well in order to obtain the key and the puzzle piece? And for this certain situation, this specific situation, it just turned into be a case where gameplay trumps realism sometimes. We're not really making 100% realistic baby simulator, and it's also far out in a fantastical type of scenery and environment. So we let this one pass, even though we think that some players might question whether or not it's realistic for the child to be able to raise the bucket.
I think it's important to kind of know that when you're working on something creative, you will always have lists and always have so much things you want to do before you finish, but I guess the important thing is prioritizing. Like, in my opinion, like the gates did what we kind of wanted them to, that they kept people there, and it might not be the most elegant solution, but like, for instance, I haven't heard anyone hating it. So maybe it's not the best one we could have done, but it does the job, which is sometimes good enough, and it let us focus on other things, you know, like making the next part really scary, because this part coming up is actually maybe the best thing in the game in a way. Like, one of the coolest things when it comes to scare factor.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw the monster implemented in this area. That was super bare bone. There was no real layout. There was only a few trees, if even that. And I remembered seeing her walking, and I was playing at a time where I did not know that she was implemented, and I just had this I could really feel it in my stomach, and I still do in several situations. I also get really tense. So I think that's a pretty clear indicator that we managed to achieve what we wanted in here, because there are very few other things in the game that affect me in the way that a horror game should, just because we've played it thousands of times during the production. So but this still I feel it sometimes when I get too close to her, and I just crawl into a log or whatever. This part is I'm really happy with this part, and how the monster comes down the path, and you see that end of the forest, and you get the scary effect if you're close enough. This is the first time the player encounters a monster that is able to catch you. This is the first time it's possible to be killed by the monster, and I think the build up leading towards this has been really good. I was afraid that it would be too long before you got to a monster, and I sort of think it is still, but it works really well here. And the forest area with the fog and the setting, the ambience and everything, I think it's one of the best places in the game. So we have this system which allows us to use a trigger as a spawn point for the monster, and then put up a path where the monster will go. And so basically we drew a map. We started out by drawing a map of this island, and just set up points for where the monster should spawn, and then where it should go, and then what it should do afterwards, which is usually despawn. We wanted to make sure that the player had at least a couple of encounters here where they would have to bump into the monster in the swamp, and we wanted the player to have multiple choices for routes to take, but we encourage the player to go to certain places first, and then and I think this worked out pretty good.
It's pretty late in the game the first time you encounter a monster. It's just around the point where you start wondering if there's going to be any monsters at all in this game, or if it's just going to be a walking simulator. But yeah, the first time you encounter the monster, like properly encounter it and can actually die. When the image effects trigger there, yeah, I think it works really well.
I really hate this monster actually. Like, I noticed that I get really tense when I know she's around and I don't quite know where she's coming from. So we did something right on her. She's creepy. And like the last bit of this level, I very rarely play without kind of no clipping between. I actually never knew that, but you can actually unhook the lamp. That's pretty cool. By the end of there's a lamp, at least by the end of the forest, which you can unhook. That was pretty cool. It's just kind of a bit more of how the game is about, you know, the interaction and physical things. I have a sound here that once every 200 seconds or so, there's like a little bit of knocking from one of the barrels. So it sounds like maybe something is inside of one. Once you get to the gate, we have like an actual bit of a chase sequence, but it's not something you really notice too much. Like, you notice the sound start coming, and once you turn around, this just means that she's gonna be very close behind you, so I'm not gonna do that. Ah, fuck! So we have actually two chase sequences. That was the first sort of chase thing. I'm not gonna even turn around now. And here is the next part, because now she's gonna... This is actually quite mean, because we implemented this for a test to show people at the GDC, and we made it impossible to escape her here. So this is where people will just get caught anyways. now we, like, of course in the game there is a way. She will rise behind you.
I really enjoy what we call the right wing. Here it starts out with, it's such a good transition between the house and the forest there. I think it starts out with the house and just the hallways. It's the building is damaged. You hear the creaking wood and the water is dripping in. And then you have this, you see the monster outside and you have to go outside and suddenly you're in just the swamp area. And it's such a completely different setting. Just being in the house and being in the forest near the water. But it has such a fantastic and smooth transition to it. I really liked that particular part.
When you go through again, you will get like the same sort of washing off, and it will be less tense when you go into the main area again. Rinse off, rinse off.
It's also a lot of fun to work on the hair for the monster in the forest areas of the game. So we wanted her to be like a woman who had drowned a long time ago in the forest, and she had kind of merged with the environment. So she had like roots going up her feet, and they're like intertwined with her flesh, and it's pretty disgusting. And she also has these huge bloated hands, but at the same time she's kind of skinny and emancipated because, well, she's dead. So we also wanted her hair to kind of flow as if underwater. Which was a challenge because we initially it's something that we ended up postponing for a while because we didn't really know how to attack it. But we ended up sideways to make the hair move, and then perfect aim to what moves when and how much. In the end, it's a more static effect than we wanted. We wanted it to be like physical, so when she moves to one side, the hair will kind of stay still in the air and then just follow her as it gets dragged along. But as the areas in the game where you see her, they're pretty much always dark, and we also have image effects on top of everything when you look at her. So even though the effect is static and moves with her, it looks convincing enough. And I'm pretty happy with how it turned out in the end. It was pretty cheap performance-wise as well. So making the characters was a lot of fun. Getting to design them and see them walk around and scare people in Let's Play videos and stuff. It's very, very fun. And always when people post a screenshot of a monster and say that this is the scariest thing ever, and you feel like, yeah, we did it. And it's very, very cool to see the effect they can have on people in the right circumstances. When I think back to when I sat there sculpting her toenails, maybe that wasn't necessary. As it's dark, and if you see her toenails, you're probably already dead. So most people don't dead. So we didn't know beforehand that we would present monsters in the way that we did. So making them as detailed We could within limits, of course, wall out. So still, yeah, having that kind of detail there really was a lot more flexible afterwards when we decided.
This area, the library, also went through a lot of iteration, but it was always designed with the purpose of being a sort of a big room with a lot of things inside. So we're trying to avoid the monster. But in the one of the later iterations, we had the river that cuts the whole room too, which I think is was the right thing to do here, because it just makes the big room a lot smaller in terms of where you can actually go, and so you get so much closer onto the monster, which makes it more tense, and of course a lot harder as well.
This actually is kind of the most skill-based places, because you have to really, like, you gotta be ready to hide very quickly. She is around all the times, and if you're not quick, like, she will catch you. So it's actually one of the more hard places where I think a lot of people have died.
The next memory.
It's your book. Listen. Oh, come on. I'm thirsty, said the rabbit. The rabbit cried and cried. She cried so much that her tears filled the bottom of the well.
We're back. What was that? That thing?
It's really cute that Teddy actually walks around here, and you can still pick him up if you want to. That's probably the cutest animation we have, when the kid picks up Teddy and just kind of pets him a bit, and it really adds to sort of me feeling happy and fond to Teddy.
She seemed so sad and desperate.
Again, we see the theme of pipes and the like brass-colored pipes and all this, which was a part of the Teddy's machinery, which we mentioned earlier. And we kept it in the game because the story was changed, and there was iterations to the story so late in the development that this was already implemented, and we just couldn't have found the time to to make it any different.
But it still works out, you know. That's good. When we changed the story, we also realized that most of the game was actually kind of supporting that story anyway. So that was kind of a really like one of the reasons why we changed. We recognized that this wasn't a huge difference in what we have to produce and change.
Hey, it's going to be so nice when we're through with all this, and we can play together all the time. Good. Another one down. Listen. We are getting very close to her. I can feel it. Oh, she must be so worried about you.
Teddy's role here is to kind of be explanatory. He just kind of tells you what you have experienced and with a sort of interpretation of it.
The dialogue in these hub levels is also made with the purpose of making Teddy realize how serious and dangerous the situation is for the child, but to still put on a brave face and be the voice saying that when we get out, we can play together and everything will be fun, and just giving both the child and the player hope. And also he keeps mentioning the mother and that she must be so worried and all that. And this is all to keep reminding the player that you are searching for the mother and this is the end goal. And yes, so to reinforce the whole mother concept.
Really nicely, the way that Teddy climbs up there is so cool.